When I feel like I'm in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. When all the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Though the night be cloudy, there is still a shine that shines on me. There will be an answer, let it be. And I wake up to the sound of the music. Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be, yeah.
So, normally, being the week before July 4th, I would want to talk about, because this is one of my high holy days. I love the concept of freedom. I love the concept of the Declaration of Independence. I am just like talking about what the courage that our forefathers had to look at what a terrible situation that they were in. And with the government of England saying, you know, we get to do basically anything we want with you, and you just got to suck it up. And they, instead of sitting in the complaint, because there were a lot of complaints, right? But instead of sitting in that complaint, they decided to rise up and do something different. This took courage. This took bravery. And look, today we get to gather in places like this, free. Dave Wilder gets to go speak his mind up in Edmonds about how he feels about certain political issues. We are free. We don't realize this, but this is a beautiful, beautiful right. So anyway, but I'm not talking about that today. Even though it's my love, we will try to weave that in. Today, we are going to be talking about joy. Now, the topic or the theme for the whole month is the time to play. And the book that you're going to be reading, because all of you will go get a copy and read it, is called The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. It's a fabulous book, and yeah, it's wonderful. So we're talking about joy today. So I was thinking a lot about joy and thinking about what is it? How does it differ from happiness? And I was trying to go back to the people, the wise people in my life, to find out what did they have to say about joy. And I guess the first person that ever talked to me about joy was my mom. My mom had a lot of trials and tribulations, as you can only imagine as the mother of 10 children. Trying to teach 10 children how to drive got her canceled from 6 different insurance companies. As she tried to raise her kids, just as she'd get things going with this one over here would go to jail. And I mean, it wasn't horrible, but there were times when she was depressed. And she told me about that, and we lived on the beach over in Hawaii. And she said there are times when I just wanted to take a long swim out. Well, since I've grown up, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate those times where you just feel so discouraged about things that a long swim seems like the solution. But she also told me that when she wanted to experience joy, when she decided she had enough of the depression and she wanted to choose to experience joy, that it was real easy. And I said, how? What did you do? And she said, all I did was go do something nice for someone else. All I did was go do something nice, and she said the joy would rise up immediately. And I kind of thought that was very simplistic and probably didn't really work like that. But you know what? Whenever I've tried it, it does. So I'm going to leave my mom's advice with you. She was the first person to talk to me about joy. But then I can remember several years ago, maybe you guys remember this. I was at a service here, and Kathy Ann was talking about the difference between joy and happiness. And I was shocked when I pulled up this book and started reading it, and guess what? The Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu had the same exact explanation. Who would have thought that they'd been listening to Kathy Ann's tapes? Either that or it's some kind of universal principle, universal truth, that there's a difference between happiness and joy. So, the way it was explained to me was happiness is kind of situational dependent. Like Sherry just shared about the engagement of her daughter. Oh my God, what a happy event. I can only imagine how happy I would be if my daughter came to me and told me that. That's a hint, Scarlett. No, stop it. I'm not going to be controlling anymore. So, but it's situational. It's like you get a raise. You come home, oh my God, you're so happy, right? I mean, there's very few people who aren't happy when they get a raise. Or you are searching for the perfect place to live and you find it. Oh my God, happy day, right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about with happiness? Okay, thank you. In fact, let's have an amen. So I always wanted that when I was on stage. So we know what happiness is, but by the same token, that's what sadness is too. Sadness is usually situational dependent, right? Something sad happens. A friend of yours either gets a really bad diagnosis or maybe happens to pass away, and we're sad. Or, oh my God, you get in a car wreck on the way home and you're sad. Or maybe you notice injustice happening in the world that day and you're sad, right? So there's stuff that's happening out there that causes us, it triggers emotions in us. And this is perfectly human. This is perfectly human. We would not be without this. In fact, I read a book one time called Brave New World, if any of you ever read it. And in that book, anytime anyone was sad, there was a society that was being very engineered. And in that, anytime anyone was sad, they were given this pill that would make them happy again. Or not really even happy, just like not sad. So there was the hero of this story said, I will not give up my human emotions. I don't want the pill. If I am sad, I want to feel that sadness because that's what being human is about. If I am happy, I want to feel that because that's what being human is about. Embrace that. Feeling happy and sad. So what the heck is joy then? If it's not happiness? Is it just a bigger form of happiness? No. Happiness, as I said, kind of comes from out here. Something happens, we feel happy. Joy is something that gets manufactured inside, and it comes from touching a part of yourself that maybe a strength inside you, a power inside you, something, an intelligence inside you, and letting that out, and you didn't even know that it was there. And that feeling of letting it out, of using it, of being a force for good in the world because of something that's coming out of you, that's joy. Let me give you an example. Do you all remember when Katrina hit in the New Orleans area, the hurricane that decimated so much of New Orleans and the surrounding area? Do you remember how sad people were? I mean, families were being separated. People had lost their homes. There was all kinds of complaining going on, too. There was pointing fingers at the government for not having built the dikes the way they should have been built. And this ended up causing lots of people, lots of distress. There was great sadness there. Do you remember that? It was a contagion of sadness, a contagion of disappointment throughout the United States. I think we were all in sympathy and solidarity with all of these people. But what ended up happening was, those of you who knew Mike Thorson, Tim Brinsfield, and some other people who work with Habitat for Humanity in this church decided to go down there. In fact, how many of you work with Habitat for Humanity? Right back there, here, anybody else? Well, and Dave, thank you very much. Thank you. So they decided that instead of sitting in the complaint about how awful a situation it was and how it must be somebody's fault, instead of sitting in that place, they asked themselves, what can we do? What can we do to make this a better situation for these people down there? So they took what they were good at, like Mike is good with a hammer, and some other people were good with brooms and cleaning up. I got to participate only in that I got to pray, which those of you who think that praying isn't a huge contribution, think again. And my husband, Paul, does not want to sling a hammer. That's like he doesn't want to do that. But he said, I'll go make some money and I will fund a portion of this trip. So everybody started coming together in their own way. And the guys who were going off to New Orleans went down there and they started fixing up one house. There were hundreds of houses down. They were fixing one. And do you guys remember that story of the little kid that was picking up starfish on the beach that was about to die? And the little kid would throw them back in the water and go along and get another one and throw it in the water. And some guy came up and said, you know, there are thousands of starfish on this beach. And a lot of them are going to die. How do you think that what you're doing is making a difference? And he picks up another and he says, makes a difference to this one. That's what Mike and the Habitat for Humanity and everybody else who participated in that project felt like. It was only one house, but one house for 1 week. They got ready for a lady who had been homeless basically since Katrina, and she was able, with tears in her eyes and joy and gratitude, to be able to move back into that house and now have a place to live again. What they did gave them joy. The people, you would think, well, she's the recipient, of course she'll be joy. It wasn't just her. It was everyone that worked on that project and came together to make it happen. They felt joy. Why? Because they were reaching within themselves for a way to contribute, a divine way within themselves to contribute and make the world a better place. Yay, God. The other thing that was amazing about this is this joy that they felt, and the joy that the woman felt about her house was a contagion that started moving across the entire city. And neighbors who hadn't been doing much except complaining started coming together to help other people create their homes, to fix their homes up. Something spread out, and there was an emergence of joy throughout. Joy comes from within. It's like reaching inside of us to stir up and let activate that divine part of us, that divine power, that divine strength, that divine intelligence. However it shows up, it is from within. It is not as a result of something outside. So why do we even care? Why do we care about joy? Because it seems like joy is one of those things we seek. It feels good, doesn't it? Here's the other thing I love about joy. It's contagious. And Emma Curtis Hopkins said she's a New Thought Christian mystic that Ernest Holmes used to study. She said, if you can spread nothing, spread joy. She said, you do your neighbor such a great service if you show up in joy for them. And think about it. Isn't that true? Here's the other thing I love about joy is, do you remember several weeks ago on Father's Day when Kathy Ann was talking? And she said, there is a plan for our lives. There's a divine plan for our lives, and we get this plan and then we suit up so that we can go live it. This plan does not include sitting in complaints. This plan includes doing something that is within us and letting that come out. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when Michael Bogart talked, and he said, we are beings of light. We are magnificent souls that have the power to create a lot more than we recognize. Sometimes when stuff happens and we find ourselves in the middle of a complaint, sometimes we are able to tap into something that's greater than we ever thought we could tap into. Anybody have that experience? Yeah. So, and then do you remember last week, anybody here last week when Charles Hall was speaking? Okay, was he magnificent? And when Charles Hall was speaking, he said, we each have our own brand of crazy, don't we? Right? We each have our own uniqueness, our own way that we are going to give to the world. So it doesn't have to look. I am not telling you that you have to go wield a hammer like Mike Thorson. Each of you has your own brand of how you're going to contribute to the world, of what you're going to pull out of yourself. Each of you has your own brand. Let me give you an example. My daughter, well, we were over in India one time, and I was a little concerned because all the stories that you hear about the little kids in India, the little kids that are begging right outside of the buses and things like that. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to handle that? Because the guy said, please do not give them money. Don't give them money because they have to give that money to their handler. And if you give them money, then what will happen is this whole cycle will just continue. Well, how do I contribute then? What can I do? What can we do? He says, well, you can give them like some candy or some pencils or something like that that's useless to their handler, but maybe we'll give them a little bit of joy, okay? So we get out of the bus, and sheepishly, because these kids, I mean, it's really heartbreaking. I'm giving like pencils or candy or something like that to, on my way to the bathroom. Come back out, and my daughter has got all of these little kids around her, and she's watching them do their little gymnastics move, and she's teaching them some gymnastics moves. She's had 15 years of experience, and so they're all playing together, and she's got them laughing, and she's got them singing, and they were doing some dances for her, some Indian dances, and they were having a connection. Now, were they going to go home that night and have anything be changed? Probably not, except they had a memory of fun. Now, could I go and do that? No, I don't know anything about gymnastics or anything. Plus, that wasn't my brand of crazy. That was Scarlett's. But do you see, each of you has something that is your way of contributing. Your way of contributing. So I've actually got a little bit off. The Dalai Lama says that if you want to touch that joy within you, there's 3 ways. Number 1, you reframe. Reframe the idea. Reframe whatever you're complaining about. Number 2, giving. Anytime you give, you start to feel joy within. And number 3, gratitude. Be grateful. Okay, so I thought, well, I can work with this. Let me see how this would work out in my idea of joy. So, in my idea of joy, you start with a complaint. Think of one. Think of something you're complaining about. You don't have one? Well, think about what's going on in the nation. Think about, just open up a newspaper or open up Twitter. Think about the weather. Think about something going on in your family. Is everything absolutely perfect in your family? And then think about people you go to work with. Find some complaint. Something you're complaining about. Something that's not quite right. Everybody got something? Okay. So, complaints, according to my friend Kelly LaRue, are very valuable. She said, you can start out with complaints. Now, hold that complaint that you've got in your mind. And she said, complaints are juicy. Complaints are something we love to share, don't we? Okay, let's go back to the thing that's happened in Katrina. Didn't we all love to share about the fact that it was such a disaster down there? And didn't we love to share about the fact that probably somebody did something wrong and the dikes weren't repaired? We all love to share about that. And she says complaints are good. It helps you find your tribe. If I'm sharing with Gary and he goes, I know what you mean, then I know Gary's in my tribe. If I start to share with Idan, and Idan goes, I don't know what you're talking about, he's not my tribe, right? Do you get that? And so complaints can be good. They help you find your tribe. The other thing that she says about complaints is it helps you decide what you want. If I'm complaining because there's homelessness in the world, then what I want to see is everyone with a home. I know what my good is then. I want to be able to witness that people have homes that they live in. Do you see how that is? So you have a complaint. On the other side of the complaint is, what do you want in the world? So complaints are good. They have good. But you get to decide whether you're going to live in the complaint or not. Don't forget that even though you don't have to move out of complaint, don't forget that complaints can be paralyzing. Sometimes we think that when we complain, that somehow we're contributing to a solution, and we're not. So you get to decide if you want to move out of the complaint or if you want to stay in it. So everybody got their complaint? Now, the next thing you do once you have your complaint is ask yourself, what can I do to contribute to something good in this situation? Like Mike and the Habitat people did. What could I do? What could I do that's interesting and fun for me? What could I do that would contribute to something good? I want you to think about the complaint you have and ask yourself that question. I don't care how big or small the answer is. Is there something that you can do? Like Kiba was saying, let it be. The answer will come to you. There will be an answer. The wisdom will come if you ask the question. Does anybody have an answer of what they could do in the midst of their complaint? I won't bring you up here. I won't even ask you what it is. But do you have anything? Good. So I'm inviting you this week to think about, what could I do instead of complaining? Because you know what? Complaining does not move our society forward. Solutions, trying to come up with something that you could do toward the good. That's a movement forward. And guess what? That's where we discover joy. That's where we discover joy. So, also, the very last thing is about being grateful. I talked with my husband a little while ago about joy. Paul, stand up. And the ministry that Paul and I love here is the Spirit at Work ministry. The Spirit, because we were both in business, and so we love the Spirit at Work ministry, and except that we would go to the Better Business Breakfast, we'd learn all these great spiritual principles, we would connect with people, and Paul would start complaining. And he would start complaining, we need like something really extended so people can really get into the practical part. And he kept complaining, and finally I said, what do you think we should do? And he said, I think we should have like a 3. Now remember, he's taking his complaint and he's turning it into something different. He said, I think we should have a 3-hour block of time once a month, right after the Better Business Breakfast. We should have a 3-hour block of time where we bring in experts from the community from the church community who know something about business, and they can give advice for free to people who want to grow their businesses. I said, okay, let's check with Don, the leader of the Better Business Breakfast, and let's see if you can get that going. He did. The number of people that came up to him afterwards and said, thank you. This is just what we needed to go from the spiritual to the practical and make this work, make our businesses successful. Thank you. The joy welled up in him. And he was grateful. He was grateful for the situation that caused him to complain. Does that make sense? Because he was able to go within and come up with a solution that hadn't been contemplated before that. So that's where you're going to find your joy. You're going to find your joy when you go to your complaint and say, don't want this anymore. You're going to find your joy when you say, what am I supposed to be doing? How can I contribute? How can I delve into my unique creativity, intelligence, and power and find out what is mine to give? And when you give it and you're grateful for the situation, that's when you'll start feeling incredible joy. So I invite you to take a moment and think about freedom. Think about the freedom that's being celebrated this week. Think about the freedom that you have to say no to a complaint. I want you to think about play. It's a time for play. Could you? I see a lot of people looking as though, oh my God, now I've got something really heavy to do. I've got to go within and discover something divine inside of me and try to bring it out. No! No! I want you all to think about this as something you can play with, that you can have fun with. What could I do to make a difference, a great difference that would be fun for me? Like gymnastics for Scarlett, like teaching people how to grow their businesses is for Paul, like creating music is for Beverly, like counseling is for our practitioners, like the coming of age people that we had up here that participated in a fun way. Think of something that is fun for you to do, a way that you can contribute in a magnificent way. That's what you're called to do. So take your complaint and in fun and in joy and in freedom and in gratitude, ask yourself, what can I do to make this world a better place? What can I do to make it good for all of us? And joy. You will discover joy. So let's go into prayer. Oh, think about the good, the contagion in the world from being in joy. Think about how that good is shared throughout the world from one to another to another. You owe it to the world to be joyful. You owe it to the world to ask Spirit, how can I be used? I'm complaining about this situation. Use me in a fun, in a beautiful, playful way. Use me and make me valuable in this world.
I used to think God was the sun, God is the sun, but God's so much more than the earth or the stars or all of creation. God is creator, makes all things new, and God needs us.
Yes, God needs all of us to shine your light,
as me,
however it is as you.
as you.
So stand, everyone.
So
Sing along. Use me. Oh,
God, I stand for you, and
here I'll abide
as you show me all that I must do.
show me, guide me. Let me be useful for good in this world. Show me, and let me go forth to do it.
All that I must do.
And so it is. Thank you.